Everyone talks about chasing their first deal, but real wealth in real estate shows up decades later. So, over the past several weeks, I've been talking to people who are already there. Investors with 12, 20, even 30 years in the game. Some own 4 rentals, some have 80 plus. But all of these folks are in this ender or harvester stage, a part that I think we don't really get to see that often. So if you're new here, hi, I'm Sabrina and I'm failing forward in real estate to build a more durable life. It's been 6 years since I've bought my first property, and I wanted to understand what investing looks like over the long arc. From people who have been doing this since I basically was a toddler. And what surprised me the most is that despite having wildly different portfolios, the same lessons kept coming up over and over again. So in this video, I wanted to talk about these takeaways from people who have real scars, real perspectives, and real equity. So let's get into it. Takeaway number 1, real estate is a long game of optionality. Really, the idea here is the options that real estate gives you. And this can happen with a portfolio with just a handful of rentals held for a really long time. And so the idea here is that you don't necessarily need speed or a whole bunch of properties, but you do need staying power. But the really cool thing is that all of the options that it provides you. People told stories of literally housing options where they could move into or move back into a property that they had bought because it was in an area that they liked, and even being able to kind of maximize that strategy to save on capital gains. So, if they moved into a property for a few years before they sold it, then they could save money that way. Another person even talked about the idea of sharing the concept of house hacking with his brother, who's 58, as a way to provide more financial security as he moves into retirement. And so this real power was just about the options that even a small portfolio can provide in terms of housing, in terms of shoring up a retirement. That was a really important takeaway. So takeaway number 2 is that cash and liquidity keep you alive. And let me tell you the stories that I heard about $200,000 repairs because of a hurricane, property managers stealing tens of thousands of dollars of insurance money, entire seasons of roof or HVAC repairs. It was very clear that many people don't fail because of a bad deal or even a couple of bad deals, but they fail because of thin reserves and not having any buffer. You can't, use half of a bathroom in one property to pay for a roof on another. And so you definitely have to remember that you need to keep cash and liquidity to be able to absorb rising expenses and unexpected surprises. Takeaway number 3 is that property management is the business. Many people talked about the error of thinking that just because they had a property manager, that their rentals were taken care of. This happened often when people would kind of buy in one place and then move and go to another place. But you don't want to outsource your business. So when you have a property manager, it doesn't mean that you're no longer responsible for managing your asset. But instead of coordinating repairs, you are providing oversight, auditing the process, and being willing to fire someone if they're not performing, and going through the headache of disengaging with one property manager to find someone who is going to be a better fit. Takeaway number 4 is that focus beats scale. So I heard stories from a builder who literally only stays in one zip code. They do their homework and they know what they're looking for. Or someone else who's out of state, but they are pruning back their portfolio to really try to identify which properties are working and which ones are not. And so the real takeaway here is that scaling for scaling's sake is not a good strategy. In fact, some of the biggest headaches came when people got lots of properties, especially at once. It's a lot of things to stabilize. And if the systems in those properties, the HVAC, the plumbing, are about the same age, they tend to go out about the same time, which means that you could have seasons of HVAC or roof repairs or entire years where you are just paying for these things over and over again across all these different properties. So growth for growth's sake can lead to burnout, complexity, and fragility. It is a really good way to lose a lot of money. So focus on doing your homework, being diligent, and making sure that things align with your goals. Takeaway number 5, tracking is non-negotiable. So this was a really important lesson that I'm actually really thinking about, and that is the idea that you need to track. You need to track the metrics in your portfolio. And a really important pro tip that I got is that what you do for your annual taxes is not enough because you can't see your portfolio over time. And so what you want to do is that over time, you are developing your own data. Because many of us, when we're starting, we're kind of using general suggestions that we hear online and rules of thumb. But what you ultimately want is to know your numbers for repairs, your numbers for CapEx, your numbers for property management, your numbers for taxes and insurance. Because then you get a sense of what your living portfolio is doing and how to make pivots and adjustments instead of just kind of guessing or applying other people's numbers to your situation. Takeaway number 6 is somewhat similar to what I've mentioned, but it's worth repeating. Leverage can cut both ways. So as I mentioned, if you keep properties over time, life is going to happen. I heard stories about divorce. I heard stories about being over leveraged to the point of being forced to sell. And so you really, really, really have to keep in mind that leverage can cut both ways. It can both accelerate or assassinate your gains. So keep in mind that you want to be able to build and maintain and sustain and be careful about overusing leverage. And takeaway number 7 is that being a landlord is also a human job. It was really nice to hear over and over and over again the stories about people who were really intentional about keeping their tenants happy, or the fulfillment that they got from being able to provide housing to families who experienced fires, for example. Just this idea that, real estate is about the finances, but it's also quite relational, and that your property is really providing a service and shaping the experiences of many people's lives. And many people I spoke to really held that at the center. Obviously you want your properties to, be your, or at least a part of your vehicle to your financial security and stability and future and everything. But many people really kept that human part at the center. This idea of this opportunity to provide this service and the fact that these tenants are paying down your mortgage. They really, really, really took that as quite the privilege and the responsibility to provide them with good service and keep them in mind as they're making decisions. So those are my top 7 takeaways and lessons. But the cool thing that really stuck out to me is that no one was just obsessed with scale. They cared about cash, reserves, simplicity, and dare I say, durability. Now, I want to be very fair. Many of the people that I spoke to were able to take advantage of lower prices. I think the person with the biggest portfolio did most of their buying, in the downturn after the 2008 housing crash. And because many people were holding on to properties, they also were able to take advantage of the crazy upswing in prices during COVID. And so these may seem like unfair advantages because they are. Many even said that they've recently decided to stop buying because they can't find deals the way that they used to years ago. And so for those of us who are starting in this market with high prices, high rates, low wage growth that makes saving hard, it's easy for us to look at these people and say, well, it's easy for you to say, but if you are not in the game, you won't have these unfair advantages that the investors 2 and 3 decades from now are going to say that we have. And so one piece of advice that one of the people I talked to said is, if you have the means, buy now. Don't wait for this magic moment when prices fall and rates come down. Like, if you can get a deal to pencil, then you should buy it. And then you hold on to it to be able to have these options that we were talking about. So then you can take advantage of these unfair advantages. These conversations also help me realize that I don't think there's ever really a set it and forget it phase of real estate. Like, none of the people I talk to just have a portfolio on autopilot. This ender or harvester stage comes with new challenges, questions, decisions, and things to figure out. One person really reflected on this beautifully as they asked the question, like, have I arrived? Is this the life that I wanted? And so it became very clear to me that building a portfolio is one thing, but keeping and maintaining it, that's something totally different. So I hope you found these 7 lessons helpful. And if you are brand new or building, be patient. Find a strategy that works for you, and please, please do not stretch yourself too thin. I'll see you in the next one.